covered in glitter. Glitter, glitter, glitter. I'll cut that out. Hi, I'm Kate and welcome to my channel. So I know I was supposed to film with my singles collection, however, I'm waiting on a few singles, so I want to wait until I have them all together before I film that. So I thought I would jump into my neutral palettes today. Now, I don't do a lot of neutral makeup. I much prefer to dive into colors. I find that I get a little bored with neutrals. However, when I have a special event like a wedding or, you know, just something special to go to where I feel like I need to look a little more formal, I do dip into my neutrals. But because neutrals are not my go-to, I am pretty picky about what I use. Before I dive into what's in my collection, I want to give a shout out to the new Glaminatrix palette. It looks beautiful. I think it's releasing this month or next month, but soon. I'm a teacher and it's summer, so I don't have a lot of disposable income right now, so I don't plan on picking this up right now, but it is beautiful. Like, if you go to their Instagram, they have lots of swatches of the beautiful shimmers. The mattes look like a more interesting side of neutral, so I think this looks beautiful. And time to dive into my neutrals. So what's on my eyes today is the Juvia's Place Nubian Earth. And this is their newest palette. It is beautiful. The shimmer that's on my eyes is this shimmer right here, and it is beautiful. I'm obsessed. I've dipped into that shimmer to pair with a few other looks, not using this palette. This is the first look that I've used just this palette for, and I'm really happy with how it performs. I enjoy Juvia's Place shadows most of the time, so they're affordable. You can find them at Ulta. The quality is just as good as most high-end, so this is what's on my eyes today. I will say the shimmers feel hard pressed, however, like, they don't perform as like a hard pressed shadow. They're beautiful. And then of course my favorite shimmer, let's see, I'll just put it right here. I don't know how well that's gonna show up on camera, but it's beautiful. So this is a beautiful neutral palette. I have a couple nude palettes from Huda Beauty. Now, I'm not gonna share the big new nude. It's a very pink leaning palette, and honestly, it's not my favorite. Probably one that I need to declutter at some point, but I do have two of their mini nude palettes. So this is the Nude Light. It is more like pinky mauvey leaning, but it's a beautiful nude palette. The Nude Medium is probably my favorite. It's just much richer tones. But again, with Huda's shadows, they do tend to lean a little more pink. I don't have the Nude Deep or Rich. Also looks beautiful, but these are really great quality. Probably the best quality from Huda that I have. Another great go-to neutral is the Persona Identity palette. To be honest, I don't really like the shimmers in this palette. I think they're really lackluster. But if you're not someone that likes intense sparkle, they might be great, but the mattes in this palette are fantastic. There's such a great variety of neutral, warm tone, and cool tone in here. So this is definitely one of my go-to neutrals. This next palette is an oldie but a goodie. I actually keep it on my desk just to have good neutral mattes to incorporate with other looks, and it is the Tartelette from Tarte. I did declutter the Tartelette in Bloom. I didn't love the shimmers, so I didn't see any point in keeping that one. I'd rather dip for this one. So this is all mattes. I have like a perfect transition shade for me down here, all the way to like these super deep browns and black and some even like soft pinky tones. But this is still a go-to. It still smells like chocolate. So if you want just some neutral mattes, I still stand by this palette. The next one is a palette that I don't think you can even get anymore, but it's from Tati Beauty. This is the Textured Neutrals. Now, I am disappointed that her brand stopped because the quality on this is really awesome. Obviously, you have like a berry row here, but otherwise, beautiful neutrals. I don't do a lot of glitter, but the glitters in this palette are actually really nice. The shimmers are really soft. They're not super sparkly. The mattes perform beautifully. I love that there's a black row. Probably need to dip into this more often than I do, but this is another beautiful neutral palette. All right, this next one has been kind of at the top of my list for neutrals. I think in my wedding palettes video, which I'll link down below, I share a lot of these in that. This is the palette that I'm wearing, and this is what I would probably wear if I were getting married again, and it's from Nabla. This is the Side by Side palette. This is beautiful. It has everything you need. You have true neutrals, you have cool tones, warm tones. I've hit pan in this shade down here. It is my perfect transition shade. You even have grays, you have a black, and the shimmers are beautiful in this palette. They are really pretty and sparkly. I've just noticed a lot of time with the shimmers. Indie brands do it best, so This is beautiful. All right, I grabbed a few of my Colourpop palettes. I probably have others that would fit the bill too, but we'd be here forever. So first up is the Cello palette. Now this is neutral with a little pop. So you have some yellow tones, you have that blue, but in general, this is a neutral palette. If you take this away, I really enjoy the mattes in this palette. I don't love the blue. I feel like it's hard to incorporate into a look that I actually like. But the neutral mattes in here are really great. The shimmers are okay. You have like kind of a yellowy one, you have a greenish gold, and some warmer tones, but I really love the mattes in here and you get a good variety. For the price, Colourpop has really great quality. I grabbed a couple of their 9 pans. So first up is That's Taupe. So this is a cooler toned neutral palette. I love this palette. You do have a Super Shock shadow in here too, which is beautiful, but I really like this. I really like these tones, just a little cooler leaning. This is great. And then I have Going Coconuts. Now this one is a little more like true neutral with some warm tones too. I really love the super deep brown in this palette. Before I got That's Taupe, this was probably my go-to neutral palette. It's still fantastic. And of course, one of the mega palettes from Colourpop. This is the Bare Necessities. Now this is one that if I'm doing wedding makeup, I always bring with. I know they've come out with some other neutral. They came out with the You're Golden, which is more like golden warm tones, and then Stone Cold Fox, which is more cool tone, taupey neutrals. But I really love this. I think there's a really good variety from light to deep. You have some berry tones, you have some warmer tones, some true neutrals, some taupey tones. This is fantastic. From Anastasia Beverly Hills, now I do have the Soft Glam palette. It's not my favorite. I have never really loved it. I don't really like how looks turn out on me. I'm not a fan. I still have it, but from ABH, I picked the Sultry palette. I know it's not available anymore, but this is my go-to. For my wedding day, I used mattes from this palette and then shimmers from the Norvina like giant palette, I think number 4. But I love this palette. So you have more of the like true neutrals and some cooler tones. I love this super, super deep brown. The shimmers are really beautiful in this palette. I don't really care about the pop of coral salmon in there. I think it could have done without, but this is probably my favorite ABH palette. From Odin's Eye, I grabbed the Verdandi palette. Now I know this is like oranges and reds, but most looks that I do turn out as like a beautiful warm neutral look. This shimmer in the middle, it's like 2 shades together, but it's really fun and pretty and looks great layered on anything. So I know it's very warm leaning, but I love this palette. And again, I get more warm neutral looks when I use it, but I love this one. All right, on the opposite end, more cool toned from Marc Jacobs, I have the Stiletto palette. This is another beautiful one. Super compact, easy to travel with. The quality is fantastic. I think you can usually find these on pretty good sale at Sephora. It is Marc Jacobs, so by nature it's expensive, but the sales are usually pretty good. This is the only one of these palettes that I have. None of the other ones have called to me, but I really enjoy this one. If I'm looking to do more of a kind of steel gray look, I definitely grab for this one. All right, on the more like honey golden end of neutral, I have the Urban Decay Naked Honey. I feel like I feature this one as often as I can because I love it. It's the only naked palette that I've held on to through the years, and every look I get pretty much looks the same, but it's always beautiful. Just a very honey golden neutral. You do have some really deep neutral browns, but otherwise really warm honey tones. I love this one. Another one that's a go-to neutral for me and one that I often bring traveling is from Too Faced, and this is the Sparkling Pineapple palette. It does still have its smell. It smells like fake pineapple. I love this palette. You can probably find it at TJ Maxx on sale for really cheap, but it's so worth it. I've had one other palette in this style and I've gotten rid of it, but this one I will never get rid of. The shimmers, you have a beautiful like champagne, you have a duochrome, you have a kind of glittery gold, but the mattes perform beautifully. I love this palette. All right, next up is my most used palette from Collidos, and it's the Sashimi City palette. And this is definitely like a neutral but not boring palette. You have 2 duochrome shimmers in here. The mattes perform beautifully. My one gripe is that the browns, while they're like slightly different in tone, they pretty much look the same on the eye. So I wish they would have taken one of these browns and put in like a super deep rich brown, but other than that, this palette is perfection. And we're gonna end with a little bit of luxury today. So I have a couple from Natasha Denona. First up is the Biba palette. So this is the all neutral palette, and it is beautiful. You have such a great variety. You have true neutrals, you have warm tones, you have cool tones. You do have a couple of her cream to powder shadows, which are not my favorite. I know a lot of people love them. They are just not for me. But otherwise, I really love this palette. Like, it has a lot of your necessities for neutrals, But the Natasha palette that I grab for way more often is the gold palette. So this is definitely a more gold leaning. You have a couple pops of blue, but this is by far my most used Natasha Denona palette. And especially for summer, I love more of the golden neutrals if I'm going neutral. I also love the shimmers in this palette, whereas in the Biba, I don't love them as much. But I just love this palette. I love everything about it, and this is definitely one of my go-to neutral palettes. And last up from Pat McGrath. Now I have a couple palettes that would kind of fit. I was debating between this one or the Divine Rose, which is much more mauve leaning, but I grabbed this one, Bronze Seduction, and this is still my favorite of all the motherships. You do have like a purple and a pop of red, but otherwise it is a neutral palette, and the special shades in this palette are probably my favorite from Pat. Let's see, I'll swatch a couple just on the fingertips. I don't know how well those will show in my lighting, but they are beautiful. They look so beautiful on the eye. I'm obsessed with this palette. So those are all of my favorite neutral palettes in my collection. Again, I have other neutrals too, but those are definitely my favorites. Let me know below what your go-to neutral palette is, or your go-to like special events palette. I would love to hear what other people are using. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.